The 73rd session of the Senate in the second regular session of the 16th Congress is hereby called to order. With the permission of the Chamber, we declare a 1-minute recess to enable the other members of the Chamber to come into the hall. 1-minute suspension. Who are out? Ligarda and very honest. The session is hereby resumed. Senator Sergio Osmeña III will lead the chamber in prayer. Senator Osmeña.
Almighty God, we come before you today truly grateful for the calling and the opportunity to serve our people. As we go about our day and perform our tasks, we ask you to strengthen those who are weak amongst us, mend those who are broken, and heal those who are wounded and sick. We also ask you, dear Lord, to bestow on us the compassion to continue touching and making a difference in the lives of our people. Make us your instruments of peace and hope. Let our hearts be your heart, our minds your mind, our hands your hands. Guide us always as we serve our people and do everything in accordance with your will. Finally, Lord Jesus, we beseech you to wrap your protective shroud around our brothers and sisters whose lives have been adversely affected by nature's wrath and man's fury. Heal our beloved land and restore faith and righteousness in our nation. All these we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator Osmeña. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano P.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Osmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon. May dumating. +2.
15 senators are present. The chair declares the presence of the quorum. Majority Leader.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 72nd Session, May 12, 2015, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none. The reading of the Journal of Session number 72 is hereby dispensed with, and upon motion of the Majority Leader, the same is hereby approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will read the reference of business.
Committee reports. Committee report number 141 submitted by the Committee on Cultural Communities on House Number 4420, introduced by Representative Bagilat et al., entitled an act declaring August 9 as National Indigenous Peoples Day and mandating the meaningful observance thereof, recommending its approval without amendment. Sponsor, Senator Legarda.
Commit to the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 142, submitted by the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation on Senate Number 1719, introduced by Senator Santiago, entitled an act providing for the minimum contents of a comprehensive report of elections to the President and to Congress by the Commission on Elections, recommending its approval with amendments taking into consideration Senate Number 1675, sponsor Senator Pimentel III.
Calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 143, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation and Finance on Senate Number 2763, with Senators Lapid, Defensor Santiago, Pimentel III, and Escudero as authors thereof, entitled an act providing for a system of absentee voting for qualified members of the electoral staff of national candidates and accredited national political parties and party lists and election lawyers, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Numbers 924 and 1440, sponsor Senator Pimentel III.
Calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 144, submitted by the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation on Senate Number 1694, introduced by Senator Santiago, entitled an act amending Section 14 of Republic Act Number 7166, otherwise known as the Synchronized Election Law of 1991, on the particular office where candidates shall file their statements of election contributions and expenditures, and providing administrative sanctions for violations of said section, recommending its approval with amendments. Sponsor, Senator Pimentel III.
Calendar for ordinary business. Wala na, no? Majority Leader.
Sir President, may we acknowledge the presence and welcome to the Senate Gods Dizdar, International Vice President for Strategic Partnership from Ankara, Turkey.
The presence of Ms. Gosdi Dizdar, International Vice President for Strategic Partnership from Ankara, Turkey, is hereby placed of record. Welcome to the Senate.
Sir President, may I ask for a minute suspension?
1 minute suspension.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Sir President, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders the following bills. House Bill number 4292 under Committee Report number 67. House Bill number 4308 under Committee Report number 101. House Bill number 4605 under Committee Report number 121. House Bill number 4461 under Committee Report number 122, and House Bill number 4307 under Committee Report number 123.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is carried.
Sir President, upon consultation with the minority leader and finding past precedents, wherein bills of similar nature we consider only for the purpose of an omnibus sponsorship speech, we will call the bills or consider the bills together. However, in the period of interpellation and amendments, we will take up these bills one by one. So on that note, Mr. President, and with the consent of our colleagues, I move that we consider on second reading under one omnibus sponsorship the House bills I have previously enumerated as reported out under their respective committee reports. For the record, these are committee reports 67, 101, 121, 122, and 123, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. The joint sponsorship of the bills enumerated by the majority leader is hereby declared in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the body, I move that the Secretary read only the titles of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the record the whole text thereof.
Secretary will do so.
House Bill number 4292, an act establishing the Misamis Occidental Sports Academy in the capital city of Oroquieta, province of Misamis Occidental, and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. House Bill number 4308, an act establishing the Davao Sports Academy in the city of Tagum, province of Davao del Norte, to be located in the Davao del Norte Sports Cultural Center and allocating funds therefore. House Bill number 4605, an act establishing the Alfonso Sports Academy and Training Center in the municipality of Alfonso 7th Congressional District, province of Cavite, and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 4461, an act establishing the Talisay Sports Academy and Training Center in the city of Talisay, province of Cebu, and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 4307, an act establishing the Siargao Island Sports Academy and Training Center in the municipality of Dapa, province of Surigao del Norte, and appropriating funds therefore.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Angara to deliver an omnibus sponsorship speech for all the House bills previously enumerated.
Senator Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader, esteemed colleagues. Just last Monday, we had denizens of culture and the arts come before us to dramatize the plight of Filipino artists. They did mention that Filipino artists and sportsmen bring glory to our country despite the risk in pursuing such careers. In recent years, the Philippines has taken the international spotlight for various reasons, from tourism to typhoons, for instance. We have gained recognition in the arena of sports. Much credit perhaps to Sarangani Rep. Manny Pacquiao's exemplary performances in past years. As chairperson of your Committee on Games, Amusement, and Sports, I have the privilege, Mr. President, of pushing for sports development in our country via the creation of various sports academies in several key areas in our country. Today, I am sponsoring the following 5 House bills. House Bill number 4605, authored by Congressman Abraham Tolentino, to create a sports academy in Alfonso, Cavite. House Bill number 4308, authored by Congressman Anthony Del Rosario, creating the Davao Sports Academy in the city of Tagum. House Bill number 4292 by Congressman George Almonte, establishing the Misamis Occidental Sports Academy in the city of Oroquieta. House Bill number 4307 by Congressman Francisco Matugas to establish the Siargao Island Sports Academy and Training Center in the municipality of Dapa. And House Bill number 4461, authored by Congressman Gerald Gullias, to establish the Talisay Sports Academy in the city of Talisay, province of Cebu. Manny Pacquiao, our pambansang kamao, is probably the most well-known Filipino sportsman in the world today. But in that roster, we also find the likes of Nonito Donaire, former WBA super featherweight champion, Michael Christian Martinez, the first ice skater from Southeast Asia who placed 5th at the 2013 World Junior Championships, the young Husband brothers leading our football team, the Ascals, and Jimmy Alapag and the entire Smart Gilas team. These are just some of the names that induce pride for our country In attracting the international spotlight, they boost the morale and enthusiasm of our fellow men, in turn helping inculcate nationalism and unity throughout a country that is oftentimes in disarray. Every Filipino sports fanatic goes into a frenzy when it comes to sports, especially since there is so much talent to celebrate. Indeed, there is much love for sports throughout the country. At the same time, more and more young athletes from the provinces are showing exemplary skills. Recently, volleyball players in the country, including Shakey's League MVP Rachel Dakis, Ateneo's Alisa Valdez, and De La Salle's Mika Reyes, held a free volleyball clinic in General Trias, Cavite. Last December 2014, Surigao City held its very first Surigao Duathlon Challenge, wherein Jefferson Tabacon of Tagum City and Anna Catherine of Germany emerged victorious. Misamis Occidental is proving to be particularly verdant breeding ground for such sporting talent, as players and athletes have been shooting up from this progressive region in northern Mindanao. In 2012, we heard about how Gian Calis from Misamis Occidental captured the first gold medal in the Philippine Olympic Committee PSC Batang Pinoy Mindanao leg by leaping 4.25 meters while drenched in the rain. Last year, Gian set a new Palarong Pambansa record for the secondary girls' 1,500-meter run, clocking a time of 4 minutes and 44.4 seconds. The Davao Regional Athletic Association, or DAVRA meet, had just taken place last February 24 to 28 in Mati City, Davao Oriental. Davao City fielded a total of 600-member delegation, and the recent Palarong Pambansa was also successfully conducted in Tagum City, Davao. Meanwhile, in Cebu City, badminton players strut their stuff in the 2015 Cebu City Mayor's Cup Charter Day Badminton Doubles Challenge, and the Cebu City Sports Commission allocated a total of 110,000 in cash prizes for the top winners of both divisions. Mr. President, the aforementioned sporting activities are just those in Cavite, Cebu, Misamis Occidental, Siargao, and Davao only. What more if we include other regions as well? Well, sports in the provinces are as active as they are here in Metro Manila. Filipinos are indeed sports aficionados. Unfortunately, Mr. President, there is a dearth of training facilities and sports development programs across the country. In an article from a noted broadsheet, Luz Mendoza, a former Philippine record holder in backstroke swimming, lamented the lack of comprehensive sports facilities in the provinces. Provinces are also in need of proper equipment and competent coaches who can train aspiring athletes to prepare them for local and international competitions. Given such a potent pool of young athletes from all over the country, superb training facilities and programs are needed for them to excel in their chosen field, whether it's basketball, football, tennis, volleyball, swimming, or boxing, to name but a few. Not only will such facilities prepare them to become world-class athletes, they could also factor into the general improvement of their well-being and, in a way, the entire nation's prosperity and well-being as well. With these facilities, many young athletes could adequately prepare for a genuine career in sports and eventually improve their chances in the local and international arenas. We hear of different organizations and teams calling out for much-needed improvements in Philippine sports. If we are truly ardent in developing sports in the country, we must find mechanisms to sharpen our competitive edge. A clear step is to upgrade our national sports training facilities. No less than our Constitution explicitly provides that the state shall promote physical education and encourage sports programs, competitions, and amateur sports, including training for international competitions. We contend that this state function includes the building of adequate training facilities. Some parts of the country have already taken steps, incremental steps, towards realizing such a progressive direction in sports development. We have upcoming Cagayan Sports Complex in Cagayan Valley, expected to open its doors to its athletes this June 2015. We have a proposed measure filed by Senator Bam Aquino and myself to construct a Philippine Amateur Sports Training Center, which jives well with the Philippine Olympic Committee's plan of building a world-class national training center for elite athletes. Mr. President, it is with these in mind that as chair of your committee on games, amusements, and sports, that I am sponsoring House Bill 4292, 4605, 4307, 4308, and 4462. Such bills seek to establish sports academies in Oroquieta, Alfonso, Dapa, Tagum, and Talisay and Cebu, respectively. Such academies shall be constituted as the primary sports development and training centers for their respective provinces and neighboring towns. They shall strengthen sports culture among the youth and become the focal point where sports training is rolled out as a holistic program. We do have so much potential, but we still lack the policies, facilities, and personnel needed to hone the skills and raw talent of those far away from the big training centers that we have here in Metro Manila and other urban centers. We definitely have to get these measures moving, given education and training are crucial during these trying times to improve Philippine sports. Believe establishing sports academies like these shall jumpstart the grassroots sports development all over the country. Other provinces could follow suit if they see that these programs are successful. We just need to turn to the experiences of other countries to see how much sports facilities help in producing homegrown talents and help train future sports greats at the grassroots level. We have the ASEC Mimosas, which is an academy in the Ivory Coast, which produced players that helped the African country qualify for its very first World Cup in the year 2006. The 2014 World Cup champions in football, Germany, built national academies, set up a 2-year coaching course for 6-year-olds, and then sent professional scouts to their league games after 2 years to make sure all prospects would find a football club. Such a program produced exceptional German football players that some of us may be familiar with: Mesut Ozil, who plays in the British Premier League, Andre Schürrle, Toni Kroos, and of course Mario Götze, who did the fateful goal which won Germany the World Cup in the final. A December 2014 report showed that since 2003, Chinese authorities had built more than 1.6 million sports venues, which is double the number of venues the Middle Kingdom had in 2003. Roughly 4 billion square meters were covered. Sports academies are sprouting across Southeast Asia as well. In Ho Chi Minh City, for instance, the Nutrifood Hagel Arsenal JMG Academy is scheduled to open in the city in June. Mr. President, the bigger picture is to build an integrated and systematic grassroots to elite training program in our country. We commend DepEd for putting in place the special program for sports, as well as long-running sports programs such as the Palarong Pambansa. Meanwhile, the Philippine Sports Commission has the Batang Pinoy and Pinoy Games that complement what the DepEd is doing. The sports academies we seek to establish can become regional sports training centers for athletes under these programs, helping bridge a gap between grassroots and elite training. Such regional centers dovetail with the proposed Philippine Amateur Training Center. I am hopeful that establishing such academies and training facilities will boost sports throughout the region. Throughout the regions. With proper coordination and implementation, we hope to train future Manny Pacquiao's, Nonito Donaires, James Young Husbands, Jimmy Alapags, and Michael Martinez's, and the like. Thank you, Mr. President. I hope for the swift passage of such measures.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 4292, 4308, 4605, 4461, and 4307.
So suspended.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension?
Suspended for 1 minute.
The law will not, right? If the law doesn't allow the big peso, it's going to be...
So I don't mind.
malaman ko lang kung ilan.
Nibigay na daw po ni Gino.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 1386 under Committee Report Number 71. This is the legislative bill on the Public Employment Service Office, the PESO bill, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that yesterday we closed the period of committee amendments, and we asked the sponsor and the Secretariat to provide us with a clean copy. Upon consultation with the sponsor, Mr. President, I move for reconsideration to reopen the period of committee amendments to allow the sponsor to continue with some more committee amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? The period for committee amendments is in order.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Angara, the sponsor.
Senator Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader. Mr. President, I have the honor to introduce the following committee amendments. On page 1, line 6, delete the word first.
Before we do that, we're referring to the version, for the record, the version dated May 12, 2015, for the record.
Yes, Mr. President. 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Suspended for 1 minute.
Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Yes, Mr. President. In response to the query of the Senate President, I had to double check, and we are using the new version, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
Mr. President, I reiterate on page 1, line 6, to delete the word first.
All right. Delete the word first.
So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
On the same page, line 6A, to delete the words second class.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
On the same page, line 7, to add the punctuation, comma, after the word municipalities, and to delete the phrase, and other strategic.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
On the same page, to delete line 7A and line 7B. So move.
Approved.
On the same page, line 7C, Mr. President, to delete the words and acronym Government Unit LGU.
Approved.
On the same page, line 11, before the word and, to insert the phrase to read as follows, or community-based organizations, CBOs.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
On the same page, line 12, after the acronym PESO, add the small letter S to read as pesos.
Approved.
On the same page, line 17, insert the phrase to read as follows, the peso shall be under the office of the governor, city, or municipal mayor, period. The peso shall be initially organized and composed of a peso manager and may be assisted by labor and employment officers, LEOs, or such number of LEOs as may be determined by the LGU. So
Any
move.
objection? Hearing none. Approved.
The entire Section 3 of the said law will now read as follows. Section 3, Establishment of the Public Employment Service Office. To carry out the above declared policy, there shall be declared in all provinces, cities, and
There shall be.
there
Hasn't
shall
you repeated?
be established in all provinces, cities, and municipalities a public employment service office, hereinafter referred to as PESO, which shall be operated and maintained by local government units, LGUs, period. The PESO shall be linked to the regional offices of the Department of Labor and Employment, DOLE, for coordination and technical supervision, and to the DOLE Central Office to constitute the National Public Employment Service Network. The PESO shall be under the office of the governor, city, or municipal mayor. The PESO shall be initially organized and composed of a PESO manager and may be assisted by labor and employment officers, LEOs, or such number of LEOs as may be determined by the LGU. Upon the request of the NGO or SUC, the DOLE may enter into a memorandum of agreement for the former to establish, operate, and maintain a job placement office. To harmonize the provision of employment services in a given territorial jurisdiction, the job placement office at the NGO and SUC and by the SUC shall coordinate their activities with the nearest PESO. That is the new Section 3, Mr. President. So move.
Approved.
On page 1A, line 27, to insert a new Section 2 to read as follows.
Sorry, can you say that again, Mr. Sponsor?
Yes, Mr. President. On page 1A, line 27,
All right.
to insert a new Section 2 to read as follows. Section 2, Section 5 of the same law is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 5, Functions of the PESO. The PESO shall have the following functions. G, to provide reintegration assistance services to returning Filipino migrant workers. H, prepare and submit to the local sanggunian their annual employment plan and budget and other regular funding sources and budgetary support of the peso. And I, letter I, perform such functions as will fully carry out the objectives of this act. So move.
Approved.
On the same page, 1A, line 28, to change the figure 2 to 3, Mr. President. On page 2, line 11, to change the figure 3 to 4. On the same page, on the third paragraph, above line 1, to insert the word holistic before the word strategies. On the same page, on the fourth paragraph, above line 1, after the word to, delete the phrase make the provision of employment services effective and efficient, and insert the new phrase to read as follows: transform the peso into modern public employment service intermediary that provides multidimensional employment facilitation services. So move. On the same page, line 20, to delete the words dole and. So move. On the same page, on the same line 20, after the acronym LGU, to insert the phrase in cooperation with the dole. On the same page, on the same line 20, after the word shall, to delete the word jointly. The first paragraph of section 7 will now read as follows: role of the dole and the LGU. The LGU, in coordination with the dole, shall establish the peso. On page 2, line 31, Mr. President, to add the letter S to the word system, to read systems. On page 2, line 32, after the word employment, to delete the word service. So move. On the same page to line 51, to delete the letter S in the word provisions.
With the provision of the sponsor, the minority leader wishes to be recognized.
Bakit sinama niyo itong mga clericals? You can just do this in the Bible.
Sorry, Mr. President.
Yung mga S sana, hindi na natin sila. Ay, talaga.
Mr. President, I got lost. I think you got lost also.
Because the premise was the sponsor was going to read how a particular section will now read after the amendments were introduced.
Yes,
But
and you have not approved and not banged the previous motion, Mr. President. So I don't know if we have accepted it or not.
the chair was not clear as to the amendments.
Hindi narinig.
Maybe
Maybe the
We can repeat
sponsor.
to satisfy the minority leader.
yes, please.
Mr. President, we will repeat the amendment. This is on the same page and on the same line 20.
you're
Page,
talking of
can we go back page?
page 2. Page. Page 2 ba? Page 2?
Page.
Page 2. Ulitin ko na lang. Ulitin. On page 2, line 11, to change the figure 3 to 4, Mr. President.
Yeah. The chair get it correctly that the sponsor was reading on page 2, line 11, and reading section 7 of as amended. Is that how it was?
It's to change section 3 to 4 because of the renumbering of the sections, Mr. President.
Ano?
So-
1 minute suspension. Ano po ito?
So isa lang naman ang numerical number. Kasi pag sinabi niyo,
What happened to the... What?
Session is resumed. Sponsor is recognized once more.
Thank you, Mr. President. To clarify, let me read Section 7 of the said law, which will now read as follows. Section 7, role of the DOLE and the NGUs and the LGUs. The LGU, in coordination with the DOLE, shall establish the peso.
And what happens to the rest of the section? If I may, if the chair may inquire.
We'll be deleting the first two sentences of the old Section 7, of the Section 7.
Yes, but
Mr.
there are
President.
about what line? If you're saying that Section 7 will just read as what you have mentioned, what happens to line 22, etc.? Is that deleted? Line 22 to line 35, which is part of Section 7. What happens to that? Is that deleted? It is the impression of the chair from the manifestation of the chairman that Section 7 will only have two lines.
No, sir, it's Section 7.
No, the existing Section 7 will still exist, Mr. President. It's only the first two sentences of the first paragraph which will be deleted.
Which should be deleted.
Yes, Mr. President.
And the rest of Section 7 of the law, which is which is part of Section 4 now of this, which is Section 4 of this measure, starting from line 22.
We'll be propounding amendments as we go along, Mr. President.
So the amendment that you referred to is only on the first paragraph
Yes.
of Section 7.
The first paragraph of Section 7.
All right. With that clarification and objection, you're not approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 2, line 31, to add the letter S to the word system to read as systems. So move. On page 2, line 32, after the word employment, to delete the word service. So move. Thus, the new paragraph B of Section 7 of the said law will now read as follows. Establish and maintain a computerized human resource and job registries to facilitate the provision and packaging of employment assistance to PESO clients and to set up intra- and inter-regional job clearance systems as part of the overall employment network. So move.
That is an amendment to line on page 2,
line. We amended line 31 and line 32, Mr. President.
The chair finds difficulty following the proposed amendments. Is there a prepared text?
I've asked the committee secretary to give you the text that I'm reading, Mr. President, to facilitate the discussion. What I read was number 22 in the sheet that you have been furnished, Mr. President.
Is
Number 22.
number 22. Well, please proceed, Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thus, let me reread that the new paragraph B of Section 7 of the said law will now read as follows. Letter B, to establish and maintain a computerized human resource and job registries to facilitate the provision and packaging of employment assistance to PESO clients and to set up intra- and interregional job clearance systems as part of the overall employment network. So move.
Approved.
Number 23 on the sheet, Mr. President. On the same line, on the same page, line 51, to delete the letter S in the word provisions to read as provision. So move.
But the provision, the word provisions was deleted in this version that I'm looking at. On line 51, there is a bracket which indicates the deletion of the phrase to the provisions of employment assistance. Now we are amending provisions to delete letter S.
Yes.
Are we reinstating this phrase in the first place?
It is a clerical correction, so I withdraw the amendment, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sponsor.
I withdraw the amendment if that's the case, Mr.
You
President.
withdraw the because
Yeah.
the lines 51 brackets that phrase which you are trying to amend. So you are now withdrawing the proposed amendment, and therefore the deletion of the phrase appearing in the deletion of the words bracketed will now stay.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, if I may proceed with your
Please
permission.
proceed.
On page 3, line 9, after the word extend, to delete the word.
That phrase
1
has
minute
already,
suspension, Mr. President. 1 minute
has already
suspension.
been deleted. 1 minute
Okay,
suspension.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Begging your indulgence, Mr. President, and the indulgence of the body, just a few more amendments. On page 3, line 37, to change.
Before that, what happens to the proposed amendments on line 9 on page 3?
Withdrawn, Mr. President.
Withdrawn.
Yes.
Yes, okay. We now proceed to the next.
On page 3, line 37, to change the figure 4 to 5. So move.
Approved.
On page 4, Mr. President, lines 1, 6, 11, and 17 to renumber sections 5, 6, 7, and 8 as sections 6, 7, 8, and 9. So move.
Approved.
And lastly, the title, Mr. President, shall now be read as the following. An act defining the role of the Department of Labor and Employment, DOLE, in parentheses, and the local government units, LGUs, in parentheses, in the establishment and operation of the Public Employment Service Office, PESO, in parentheses, and the operation of job placement offices in SUCs and NGOs, amending for the purpose sections 3, 6, 7, and 9 of Republic Act number 8759, otherwise known as the Public Employment Service Office Act of 1999. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? You are
Thank you, Mr. President, for your indulgence.
Majority Leader.
Move to suspend, Mr. President.
The
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
suspended for 1 minute.
Ready to resume, Mr. President. Mr. President, upon consultation with the sponsor, he is done with the proposing the committee amendments. So may I move that we close the period for committee amendments.
So close.
Mr. President, may I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1386 under committee report number 71 and request a clean copy so that those who would like to make individual amendments can do so on Monday, Mr. President.
The Secretary is so directed.
Mr. President, may I move for a minute suspension?
Suspended 1 minute.
Social Security. Ready to resume, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we transfer proposed Senate Resolution number 1333 under Committee Report number 136 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution 133 under Committee Report number 136.
Approved.
With the permission of the body, I move that the Secretary read only the title of the said measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Proposed Senate Resolution number 1333. Resolution concurring in the ratification of the agreement on social security between the Republic of the Philippines and the Kingdom of Denmark.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Pia Cayetano to sponsor the said measure.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am delivering this sponsorship speech on behalf of the Chair of the Committee on Foreign Relations, Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the bilateral social security agreement with Denmark seeks to reduce or eliminate border, nationality, or other restrictions that prevent covered workers from receiving benefits under the social security legislation of the Philippines or Denmark. The provisions of the agreement are consistent with the state's policy to afford full protection to labor with the right to social security enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and under the International Labor Organization conventions. Indeed, globalization has opened up opportunities across economic borders, paving the way for a more dynamic migration of labor. Unfortunately, overseas Filipinos face the risk of exclusion from social security coverage when working overseas. Most labor-receiving states do not cover foreign workers under their social security scheme, leaving our workers with no access to basic safety nets while working abroad. For those who have permanent status, they are unable to accumulate enough insurance periods to qualify for social security benefits, since the average requirement is between 15 and 20 years of employment. The agreement, therefore, seeks to ensure the access by Filipino workers to their social security benefits, even if they are now working or residing in Denmark. Its main objective is to strengthen the mutual relations between the two countries in the field of social security. Historical background. The negotiations of the agreement took place in Copenhagen from 31st January to 1 February 2011, where both sides agreed on a draft text. Denmark proposed to draft an administrative arrangement to the agreement, which the Danish Pensions Agency and the Philippines Social Security System finalized through electronic communications. The negotiation meeting in Copenhagen was the only one convened by both sides after they agreed to settle any unresolved issue through electronic communications. The agreement and its accompanying administrative arrangements were signed on 11 September 2012 in Copenhagen with SSS President and CEO Emilio de Quiros, Jr. and Danish Minister for Social Affairs and Integration Karen Hækkerup as signatories for the Philippines and Denmark respectively. Dole Secretary Rosalinda Di Mapilis Baldos endorsed the ratification of the agreement in her letter to DFA dated 27 August 2014. GSIS President and General Manager Roberto Vergara conveyed the same endorsement to the DFA in his certificate of concurrence dated 12 November 2012. Salient features. The agreement consists of 23 articles. Its accompanying administrative arrangement has 11 articles. As in similar social security arrangements we have with Austria, Canada, France, United Kingdom, Belgium, Switzerland, Spain, the agreement has the following salient features consistent with ILO standards. 1. Equality of treatment. A covered Filipino, including his or her dependents and survivors, shall be eligible for Social Security benefits under the same conditions as Danish nationals in Denmark, and a covered Danish national shall be eligible for Social Security benefits under the same conditions as Filipino nationals in the Philippines. Export of benefits. A person shall continue to receive his or her benefits wherever he or she decides to reside, the Philippines, Denmark, or even in a third country. Third, totalization. Contribution or creditable periods in both countries shall be added together, excluding overlaps, to determine qualification for benefits. Fourth, payment of benefits. Each country shall pay a fraction of the benefit due from their respective system in proportion to actual contributions or credible periods. Fifth, mutual administrative assistance. Covered members or beneficiaries may file their claims with the designated liaison agencies of the Philippines or Denmark, which shall accordingly extend assistance to facilitate the procession of claims. Reason for concurrence and advantages of ratification. The agreement not only further strengthens diplomatic relations between the Philippines and Denmark, but more importantly manifests the Philippine government's genuine concern for the welfare and well-being of Filipino migrant workers and their families, specifically in the field of social security. Non-ratification of the agreement may result in the following. 1. Inequality of treatment to Filipino migrants in Denmark compared with Danish citizens as regards social security. 2. Possible non-eligibilities to social benefits for Filipinos due to the lack of insurance periods. 3. Non-exportability of social security benefits. 4. Inconvenience in the filing of claims in the absence of designated liaison agencies in each country. For these reasons, I humbly recommend that this Senate ratify the agreement on social security between the Republic of the Philippines and the Kingdom of Denmark. Thank you.
Majority, thank you, Senator Pia Cayetano, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we open a period for interpellation.
Period for interpellation is in order.
Mr. President, upon checking with the Secretariat, a minute suspension, Mr. President.
1 minute suspension.
Denmark and Portugal. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, upon conferring with the Secretariat and with the Minority Leader, there are no members of the Senate who signified their intention to ask clarificatory questions or interpellation. I move that we close the period for interpellation.
Period for interpellation is terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period for amendments.
Period for amendments is in order.
Mr. President, there are no committee amendments and there are no members who have signified their intention to propose individual amendments. So I move that we close the period for amendment.
For amendment is terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading proposed Senate Resolution number 133 under Committee Report number 136.
Proposed Senate Resolution number 1333 under Committee Report number 136 is hereby approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we transfer proposed Senate Resolution number 135 under Committee Report number 138 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection here none? Again.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution 1335 under Committee Report number 138.
Approved.
Mr. President, I move that the Secretary read only the title of the said measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Proposed Senate Resolution number 1335. Resolution concurring in the ratification of the agreement on social security between the Portuguese Republic and the Republic of the Philippines.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Pia Cayetano to sponsor the said measure.
Senator Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am delivering this speech and will defend this resolution on behalf of the Chair of the Committee on Foreign Relations, Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, rationale. Globalization has opened up opportunities across economic borders, paving the way for a more dynamic migration of labor. Unfortunately, overseas Filipinos face the risk of exclusion from Social Security coverage when working overseas. Most labor-receiving states do not cover foreign workers under their Social Security scheme, leaving our workers with no access to basic safety nets while working abroad. For those who are on a permanent status, they are unable to accumulate enough insurance periods to qualify for Social Security benefits, since the average requirement is about 15 to 20 years. The overriding principle remains, however, that is the constitutional duty of the state to afford full protection to labor, whether local or overseas. And fundamental to this is the provision of Social Security, ensuring that all Filipinos are accorded Social Security coverage. It is also provided in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that everyone as a member of society has a right to Social Security. For these reasons, the Philippines concludes this agreement with Portugal. Historical background. The Social Security Agreement between the Philippines and Portugal was signed in Lisbon on 14 September 2012 by SSS President Emilio de Quiros Jr. and Portuguese Minister for Solidarity and Social Security Pedro Mota Soares. An accompanying administrative arrangement was likewise signed on the same day by Misters de Quiros and Soares. The government service insurance system was consulted in the negotiation of the agreement and endorsed its ratification. Dole Secretary Rosalinda Di Mapilis Baldos endorsed the ratification of the agreement in her letter to DFA dated 27 August 2014. The agreement was initiated by SSS and DFA and accepted by the Portuguese government. Negotiations started in Manila in October 2009, followed by a second and third round in Lisbon in May 2010 and September 2012, respectively. DFA records show that there are approximately 2,505 Filipinos in Portugal who will stand to benefit from this agreement. Salient features. The agreement consists of 35 articles. Its accompanying administrative arrangement has 28 articles. Its salient features include the following. 1. The agreement covers beneficiaries of SSS, GSIS, and the Employees' Compensation and State Insurance Fund, ECSIF. There is an automatic clause which expands the coverage of the agreement to future amendments to the laws governing SSS, GSIS, and ECSIF. Article 2. 2. Equality of treatment entitles a covered Filipino worker, including his family members and survivors, to Social Security benefits under the same conditions as nationals of Portugal. Article 4. 3. Waiver clauses in the agreement allow Filipino beneficiaries to avail of cash benefits without reduction, suspension, or withdrawal in the contingencies of sickness, maternity, paternity and adoption, invalidity, old age, accident at work, or occupational disease, even if they reside in Portugal. Article 6. 4. The agreement does not allow overlapping claims of benefits under its Article 7. In the event of overlapping benefits, Article 14 provides that the legislation of the country where the contingency materialized shall apply. 5. Article 12 and 15 provide for the totalization of insurance periods, which combines the creditable periods, excluding overlaps, of covered workers under the Social Security scheme of the Philippines and Portugal, to determine the eligibility to benefits and the manner of calculation of benefit payment on a proportional sharing basis. 6. Mutual administrative assistance under Article 22 facilitates coordination between the liaison agencies of the Philippines and Portugal in extending assistance to covered workers and handle matters pertaining to the implementation of the agreement. 7. While the eligibility to benefits may be established through the aggregation of insurance periods in the Philippines and Portugal, the amount of benefits to be paid by each country will only be up to the extent of insurance periods actually completed in the country. Thus, no additional cost will be borne by each country in the implementation of the agreement. Reasons for concurrence and advantages of ratification. There are more Filipinos in Portugal than Portuguese citizens in the Philippines. Thus, the Philippines stands to benefit more from the agreement. This is the reason why it was the Philippines which initiated the establishment of the agreement. If the agreement is not ratified, therefore, it can be viewed as bad faith on the part of the Philippines for having negotiated without the sincerest and true intent of pursuing its implementation. Non-ratification of the agreement may result in the following. 1. Inequality of treatment of Filipino migrants in Portugal compared with Portuguese citizens as regards Social Security. 2. Possible non-eligibility to Social Security benefits for Filipinos due to the lack of insurance periods. 3. Non-exportability of Social Security benefits. 4. Inconvenience in the filing of claims in the absence of designated liaison agencies in each country. Finally, the bilateral Social Security agreement with Portugal aligns with the Philippine government thrust to extend Philippine Social Security benefits to Filipinos who have departed the Philippines to work or reside in Portugal. The relocation of Filipinos to Portugal should not deny them the privilege and right to avail of the benefits they are otherwise entitled to receive from SSS should they have decided to remain in the Philippines. For these reasons, I humbly recommend that the Senate ratify the agreement on Social Security between the Republic of the Philippines and the Portuguese Republic. Thank you.
Majority Leader,
Mr. President, I move that we open the period for interpellation.
period for interpellation is in order.
Again, for the record, Mr. President, upon consultation with the Minority Leader and the rest of our colleagues, no senator has expressed his or her intention to interpellate on the measure. I thus move that we close the period for interpellation.
Period for interpellation is terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period for amendments.
Period for amendment is in order.
Mr. President, there are no committee amendments from the sponsor, and there are no senator has signified their intention to propose amendments. That's why, on that note, I move that we close the period for amendments.
Period for amendment is terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on the second reading, Mr. President, resolution number 1335 under committee report number 138.
Any objection? Hearing none. Proposed Senate Resolution number 1335 and the committee report number 138 is hereby approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of proposed Senate Resolution 1335 under committee report 138.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2679 under committee report number 110. This is the legislative bill on Unifast, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, with the parliamentary status of the measures that we close the period of committee amendments on May 11, I thus move that we open the period of individual amendments.
Period for individual amendments is in order.
Mr. President, just as a manifestation, Senate President Pro Tem Recto has some individual amendments, and so does this representation. However, upon conferring with the sponsor and authors of the bill, Mr. President, there are some major differences between the House and Senate version. Therefore, Senator Rector and myself will bring these amendments up during the Bicam instead of on the floor. So I move that we close the period for individual amendments, Mr. President.
The chair has submitted to the sponsor some proposed amendments, which I am told, which the chair is told, is acceptable to the sponsor.
Individual amendments, Mr. President.
Yes.
May I withdraw my motion and apologize to the Senate President, Mr. President. May I now ask Senator Pia Cayetano to read into the record the amendments and the acceptance of said. As for a minute suspension, Mr. President.
Minute suspension.
committee.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Sir President, may I just make a clarification? I move to withdraw the motion to close the period for individual amendments so that Senator Pia Cayetano can read into the record and formally accept the individual amendments of the Senate President. Secondly, may I also withdraw my manifestation about amendments we will be doing in the BICAM, and we will just monitor the final version of the bill after the individual amendments of the Senate President. Mr. President.
The chair rules that all amendments on the Senate version must be presented to the chamber and approved by the chamber, and that is what our BICAM contingent will carry to the Bicameral Conference Committee. So the Senate will approve and send to the BICAM the version that is approved by the plenary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Cayetano.
Mr. President, we are prepared to put on record and to submit to the body the proposed amendment of the Senate President. On page 6, line 2, insert a comma after the word beneficiaries. Submit.
What does the sponsor say?
We accept, Mr.
Any
President.
objection here?
On page 6, also on page 6, line 2, we insert the word the after the phrase such as. We accept this amendment, Mr.
Any
President.
objection here?
Still on page 6, line 8, replace the word may with shall, And the same is accepted by the sponsor.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 6, line 12, after the word board, insert colon, provided finally that the relevant government agency shall submit an annual report on the implementation of their STUFAPs to the Unifast board. We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Next page. Sure. Allow me to just read into the record the rationale for the amendment submitted by the Senate President. During the committee hearings, representatives of various agencies with established scholarships and related financial assistance programs have expressed reservation on their inclusion in Unifast. The OST, for instance, underscored that such inclusion might impinge upon the institution's proven efficiency in carrying out their scholarship programs. Thus, the use of permissible language in determining which of the programs may continue to be implemented under the agency would cause confusion. The measure would employ categorical language on who determines inclusions, exclusions in the bill's coverage. Thank you. We proceed, Mr. President, with page 10. Page 10, line 4 to 7, delete the portion starting from end on line 4 up to full in line 7. We accept.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Still on page 10, between lines 7 and 8, insert the following subparagraphs. B, specific regular schedule of repayment agreement, semicolon. C, inclusion of a guarantor who is a member of the GSIS or the SSS in the student loan agreement, semicolon. And D, the student-borrower who intends to go abroad shall be required to pay the remaining balance of the student loan. Section 13 shall now read as follows. Section 13, terms of availment of STUFAPs. The board and/or the implementing agency may, prior to the grant of scholarship, grant in aid, student loan, or other modalities of STUFAP, impose terms and conditions of availment, such as but not limited to the following: A, return of service obligation or the rendering of a minimum number of years of service for the country or the implementing agency, comma. B, specific regular schedule of repayment agreement, semicolon. C, inclusion of a guarantor who is a member of the GSIS or the SSS in the student loan agreement, semicolon. And D, the student borrower who intends to go abroad shall be required to pay the remaining balance of the student loan, provided that the board may grant exemptions as it deems reasonable to the above-mentioned limitation. We accept these amendments, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none, approved.
Rationale for the amendment. The prohibition for leaving the country as a condition for the grant of financial assistance may have implications on the constitutional right to travel. Under Section 6, Article 3 of the Constitution, the liberty of abode and of changing the same within the limits prescribed by law shall not be impaired except upon lawful order of the court. Neither shall the right to travel be impaired except in the interest of national security, public safety, or public health as may be provided by law. The subparagraphs are adopted from the House version of the Unifast bill, which has been approved in third reading. We now proceed, Mr. President, still on page 10, lines 16 to 19, delete the entire subparagraph B, starting from B, cancellation in line 16 up to obligation in line 19. We accept this, Mr. President.
Approved.
On page 10, on line 21, after the word other, insert the phrase appropriate and reasonable. We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
The rationale for the following amendment is that the cancellation of passport as a sanction may have implications on the constitutional right to travel, as earlier noted, and the power of the Unifast board to impose other sanctions as may be deemed necessary gives a lot of discretion to the board, thus to ensure fair, appropriate, and reasonable as a condition for the sanctions to be imposed by the board. I'll just read it. Just for the record, I will proceed. I will finish first the amendments of the Senate President and later introduce a few other amendments just for ease of reference as to who is introducing the amendments. So I continue with the Senate President's amendments, page 18, line 26 to 29. Delete the portion starting from there in line 26 up to scholarships in line 29. We accept.
Objection or not?
Page 18, line 29, before the word thereafter, insert the following sentence. The amount necessary to carry out the provisions of this act shall be charged against the current year's appropriation of the CHED. We accept.
Approved.
Is this new? Is this new or is that it? Just to read the rationale, put it on the record. Since the Unifast board's role is limited to policy making and cannot contemplate authority to disburse or distribute scholarship funds, the proposed appropriation in the amount of a staggering 11 billion defies logic. Furthermore, upon consultation with the DBM, the allocation of 5 billion from funds in the National Treasury appropriated for scholarship cannot be justified because such an earmarking for scholarship does not exist. We have, as a response to this, Mr. President, we have consulted with CHED, and the same will be handled by CHED on its own and will be reflected at the appropriate time in the GAA.
So the appropriation will be in the General Appropriations Act.
Yes, and whatever is reflected in CHED's budget will be the only budget that will fund this bill for now, Mr. President, and any other addition will be reflected in due time in the budget of CHED.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. A minute suspension, Mr. President.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Angara to make ready to resume, Mr. President. Sorry.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Angara to propose individual amendments.
Senator Angara is recognized.
As for a minute suspension. A minute suspension, Mr. President.
1 minute suspension.
We are... Tunay na ready na. We are really ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed. Before the chair recognizes Senator Angara, just for the record, the version that is being debated on the floor is the bill with the appropriate or the approved committee amendments as of May 11, 2015. We have to state that for the record so that our records will reflect accurately the pages and the lines being discussed. Now the chair recognizes Senator Angara.
Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader. Would like to propose an amendment to Section 5,
Can you read?
Section 5, page 5.
Page 5,
Section 5,
line
20, regarding the coverage of Unifast. To delete, my proposed amendment, Mr. President, is to delete the word national in line 20. And if I may explain, the rationale is after discussion with the chairperson and sponsor, Senator Cayetano. Uh, Given the globalization of the world economy and following the practice of many nations, notably Singapore in the region, Mr. President, the government funds certain outstanding students for study abroad. So we thought the word national might unduly limit the scope of scholarships to be given, so such as to exclude international scholarships, especially those for further study, for our diplomats, for our those who are engaged in trade, tourism, and other areas of pursuit where the international aspect is overwhelmingly important, Mr. President. That's the reason for the amendment.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, on page 12, lines 8 to 9, to delete the phrase Department of Budget and Management, DBM, and replace it with CHED.
We accept.
Can we place on the record the
Rationale.
for that?
The rationale, Mr. President, is that the board will prepare its budget, and before it goes to the DBM, it first passes through CHED.
As being an attached agency of CHED, no? That's my understanding.
Being under CHED, Mr. President. So CHED will intervene before it goes to the DBM. That's my understanding of the amendment as explained to me by the chairperson, Mr. President.
So
in other words, Mr. President, it actually forms part of the budget of CHED, but it being in a way a separate agency, it will just present. In other words, it has no business presenting it directly to the DBM.
All right. Okay,
so it will
yes.
just present it to CHED.
So the amendment will actually put the budget as part of the budget of the CHED.
Yes, which it is, but it made it confusing when the original bill reflected it as
Yes,
DBM.
all right. Any objection? None approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last proposed amendment is on page 13, line 17. This pertains to donations, legacies, and contributions on line 17. After the word contributions in line 17, to insert the phrase of cash or property duly received. I so move, Mr. President.
Cash or property
Duly received.
What is the sponsor saying?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Is that the end of the amendment, of your amendment, Senator Angara?
That is. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to the sponsor.
Thank you.
Majority Leader?
Mr. President, I move to close the period of our interpellation for Senate Bill number 2679 as Committee Report 110.
Period for amendment is terminated.
Sir President, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 2679, Committee Report number 110.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill 2679 is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I ask for a minute suspension.
1 minute suspension. What about this reference?
Clear ko lang.
Okay kay Tito Sir.
Okay na.
Siya nag-suggest.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, may I move to elect members of Bicameral Conference to reconcile the difference between conflicting provisions of Senate Bill number 2518 under Committee Report number 94 and House Bill number 3675. This is an act removing the conditions for condonation of unpaid taxes due from local water districts, amending for the purpose section 289-A of the National Internal Revenue Code as amended. May we elect Senator Sani Angara, Senator Ralph Recto, and Senator J.V. Ejercito, Mr. President. I so move. Mr. President, I move that we take up the additional reference of business.
Secretary will read the reference of business.
Bills on first reading, Senate Bill number 2764, an act amending Republic Act number 70-27 as amended by Republic Act number 9400, otherwise known as the Basis Conversion and Development Act of 1992, introduced by Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
Committee on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises, Ways and Means, Finance.
2765, an act declaring certain acts of agricultural smuggling as economic sabotage, prescribing penalties therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Cynthia A. Villar.
Agriculture and Food, Justice, Human Rights, Ways and Means.
Resolution, proposed Senate Resolution number 1337, resolution expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate of the Philippines on the death of Representative Enrique Henry Cojuangco by Senator Peña III.
Rules.
Second additional reference of business. Resolutions, proposed Senate Resolution number 1338, directing the appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation regarding the alleged violations of Republic Act number 7076, otherwise known as the People's Small-Scale Mining Act of 1991, and Presidential Decree number 1899 entitled Best Establishing small-scale mining as a new dimension in mineral development in the village of La Fraternidad in the town of Tubay, Agusan del Sur province, by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Environment and Natural Resources.
1339, resolution directing the Committee on Ways and Means to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the failure of the Bureau of Customs to address revenue leakages and the possible measures that can be implemented by the Bureau of Customs to plug such leakages and improve collection efficiency, such as but not limited to the implementation of the pre-shipment inspection scheme, and the nagging problem of court congestion by Senator Cayetano AP.
Committees on Ways and Means.
Mr. President, just with your indulgence, just one more item. Mr. President, just a change of referral. With the consent of the concerned committee chairpersons, I move to transfer the referral of proposed Senate Resolution 1288 from the Committee on Public Services to the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations as its primary referral. Mr. President, this resolution was referred to the Committee on Public Services, but a similar resolution and similar topic is already being taken up by the Blue Ribbon Committee. So upon conferring with Chairman Osmeña and the subcommittee chairman, J.D. Ejercito, they would rather consolidate these resolutions in the Committee on the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations.
May the chair know what is the subject matter?
This is on the LTO, on the license plates and the and driver's license, Mr. President.
There are allegations of anomalies.
There are two resolutions, Mr. President. The one where there is a allegations of anomalies was already referred to the Blue Ribbon Committee, and they have already taken jurisdiction. So we will only join 1288 with the Blue Ribbon Committee, Mr. President.
With that clarification, the transfer of the referral is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, May 18, 2015.
Before the chair acts on the motion, the minority leader wishes to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Can we have the microphone, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I have filed the bill, Senate Bill 2687. This is the education benefits for armed forces and other enforcement agencies. And it was referred to the Committee on Rules. May I know if we can finally refer it to the proper committee so that we can start
Hearing.
rolling, so to speak?
Start the hearing at least.
Yes, Mr. President.
May I
President,
know from the
May I have a
majority
minute
leader?
suspension just to confer on the resolution or bill number, Mr. President?
So session is suspended. Guluhan eh.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Resume.
Mr. President, the reason why it was this Senate Bill 2687 was referred to the Committee on Rules because it deals with the educational benefits of different government of dependents of different government employees, from the police to the NBI. So upon consultation with the minority leader and the author, I move that we referred the bill to the Committee on Education as the primary committee, since it deals with educational benefits, and the Committee on Finance as the secondary committee, Mr. President.
So referred.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
President, may I now move to adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, May 18, 2015.
Session is adjourned until Monday, May 18, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.